Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. If you're new here, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Amanda and I run the channel with my friend Jen. So the year is almost 2/3 of the way over. It is mid to late August and we only have 4 more months roughly left in the year, so we only have about 1/3 of the year left. And there are just some books that I want to read by the end of this year. So I thought that we would share 5 books that we want to read by the end of the year. And Jen thought it might be a great idea to also talk about maybe 5 books that have been our favorites so far this year. So in this video, we're calling it 5 and 5. 5 books to read by the end of the year and 5 of our favorite books so far this year.
Hey guys, welcome to our 5 and 5. I'm sure Amanda has explained what our video is going to be about, and it was really hard for me to whittle down both lists. I think it was harder for me to do 5 I want to read because I am such a mood reader, and it always depends on what book is hitting which mood and if I'll want to read it. There's some books I feel that I want to read no matter what. I was really trying to just pick the books that I felt I really wanted to read by the end of this year. But I started to think, oh my God, there's so many choices. I'm gonna have like the longest TBR in the world. It was easier to pick the 5 that I feel were my like top 5. Though I cheated just a little bit, and I will explain in a minute. The top 5 for me this year, the easy ones that I feel were easily at the very top: 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. If you watched our mid-year freak out tag video, I do talk a lot about that book in that video. I feel like this book is going to end up being in my top 5 for the rest of this year, unless I suddenly find 5 more very top tier books at the rest of the year. I just really loved this book. And what's really funny, I talked about in that other video, is it's not the typical genre that I normally read. I only read it because of a Goodreads scroll video we did for a secret TBR pick. It just happened to be the one that I landed on. And this book was just so very, I just love the language. I love the setup and everything that happened in this book. It just hit me, I think, the right way when I ended up reading it. If you want to see more thoughts, Amanda, I'm sure, can tag the videos below. It has its own video, and then also the mid-year freakout tag too. Another in my top 5, again, funny because it's more science fiction. I guess it has bits of fantasy. It's hard to me because I don't know science fiction fantasy that well, so I can't say that I would be able to talk about it very well, but Heavenbreaker, which I still have, Heavenbreaker by Sarah Wolf. I love this main character mostly from this book. A lot of what is happening, because it's very futuristic and things are happening that I don't completely understand, but I love the action. I love the main character. This one was one that I think Amanda really wanted to read. It might be in her top 5 too, possibly, but I had sent it to her because I had won this from Red Tower. We originally were gonna do an ARC review or a vlog, but Red Tower always has these messages that says to not talk about plot points or specifics in these books before the publication date. So we ended up scrapping that and just reading it for pleasure. But this one I absolutely love. I think Amanda bought the one that has the sprayed edges. I did not. I was going to. Barnes & Noble's actually having a 50% off sale right now, a book haul, and it is on that sale until Labor Day. So I am very tempted to grab that while I can, to have like a collectible edition. But this one I also very much enjoyed, definitely in my top 5. Another I haven't talked about in a video yet, I think because I'm trying to remember when I read this, and it might be in the July, August, and we haven't done a roundup. We're doing 2 months at a time, a roundup of what we have read. So I don't think I have a video talking about it, but it is God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And it is a really big book too. And I really enjoyed this book. It was fiction, which is always going to be my first love. And there was something about the intertwined like mystery and kind of suspense, not to mention really great writing by Liz Moore. I haven't read her before. She does have a couple other well-known books, but I haven't read them. It makes me want to read them now. To me, the ending of this book was just sealed with about 5 stars. I was really enjoying it, really kept interested in the story, wanting to know what happened, because there's a disappearance at the heart of 2 disappearances at the heart of this book, and it takes place in 1970s at a camp. And the characters, you jump back and forth in time and you get to know certain characters. But the way this book ended, I felt just really solidified this as being a fantastic book. So definitely in my top 5 for this year. The other 2-ish that are in my top 5, I was able to read the newest Jodi Picoult book. It's not coming out until actually this week. Coming up, it's August 20th that it's coming out. I was able to get an Edelweiss copy ahead of time, and it's by any other name, Jodi Picoult. I am a huge Jodi Picoult fan. I am just a fan of her writing. I love the topics that she chooses because though they are often controversial and very timely, I feel she's very well researched and she makes you look at topics from different sides. I don't feel she ever just picks one side and then just tries to shove it in your face and this is my agenda. Now, for this one, I do feel she's changed a little bit because she is very convinced that not only did William Shakespeare not write all of his plays, but she is very convinced that Emilia Bassano is the true author of a lot of his plays. She doesn't say that she's the true author of all of William Shakespeare. She is more of the mind that William Shakespeare picked and chose from different writers at the time, but Emilia Bassano, she believes, is the author of a lot of his plays. And she presents a very interesting case. I am an English major from college, and that was never a topic back when I was in college, but I do remember hearing about it years later. And there is some thought that he didn't really write for many, many reasons. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of all those reasons, but this book was one of her longer books, and she tells the story between Emilia Bassano in the 1500s, and she also connects it to a character that's modern day in New York City and a playwright that is a descendant of Emilia Bassano. And Jodi really feels, she's been doing a lot of interviews, and she really feels she is the voice for Emilia. She was meant to put this story out there to really let people know this is a huge possibility. So I think she already said she's getting a lot of hate because of that. But I just really love her writing. I feel that was a huge piece of why I love this book. But there have been some by her that I wasn't really a big fan of and are not ones that I would have put in my top 10 list at the time. One was Lone Wolf. I wasn't really a big fan of that. And there were a few that I wasn't a huge fan of, but this one is very much not just one of the top 5 for me this year, but I would say in the top 5 of Jodi's books overall. That is a huge statement for me because I have read a lot of her books. I believe I counted before I did my ARC review, which Amanda can link in the comments, but I would say this one is just, if you have any interest in any of that, William Shakespeare, or historical fiction, or even strong women's stories, I believe this would be one you would appreciate and love. Jodi's writing is just, I love her writing so much. Definitely top 5. And my last-ish, And these weren't in any particular order. Like when I was saying my top 5, I wasn't saying them in like order and this is number 5. It's hard for me to think of them like that. I don't like to categorize like that. The last one, I almost wanted to put the author's name, and no, it's not Frida McFadden. I very much enjoy Frida McFadden's books. These were just on a whole other level. My favorite of Frida's that I would have put in my top 10, I would say, is The X from last year, Frida McFadden. That is my favorite Frida story. I really enjoyed The Housemaid too. The other author that no one would be surprised that I would name is Sophie Cousins. I read all of Sophie Cousins' books this year, and when I was sizing up the books that I have read this year, obviously they were all on there. And the one I would put on the list is the one that hasn't even come out yet. It comes out in November. I was able to get an Edelweiss copy, and it's coming out in November, and it's titled, Is She Really Going Out With Him? I would say the ones that I read this year, that one would be, I guess, edging out the other ones. It's hard for me to pick any of hers because I just enjoyed all of her books immensely. I think still my favorite one by her is the one I read at the very end of last year called The Good Part. Of her books, it was the first one and introduced me to her, but it was just such a sweet and very humorous. Her humor just hits me. I just love her books. They make me laugh. They make me happy. And I would never say that romance would have been in my top 5 or even top 10, but she has definitely won me over with her books. So even though I picked one of hers, and why I said ish, I would have to put all of her books in my top 10 because I just really love her books so much. I forgot to mention, but I have made it up to 70 books this year. So those were the 5-ish out of 70 books that I read this year. I feel that I have read a lot of great books this year, but there were some duds in there too. We do have 4 months left, right? It is the middle of August, and then September, October, November, December. So I'm not sure. Maybe there'll be some great books that end up pushing those further down the list, and I might have, when I do a recap for this year, it might end up being a whole new slew of books. Who knows? We shall see.
So my 5 favorite books so far this year are not necessarily books I gave 5 stars to. Surprisingly, they are books that I think about often that left a lasting impression on me that I really enjoyed, and not necessarily 5 stars, but just great, fantastic books. The first book I want to talk about on this list, I'm sure that you all can probably guess, is Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. That book I read in the very beginning of the year, and I just love that trilogy. There's only 2 books out. We're waiting on the 3rd book, and if it's any indication of the time between the 1st and 2nd book, it's probably going to be 2026, I'm guessing, when the 3rd book comes out. But they are long books, and the quality of writing is just so fantastic. The imagination of Jay Kristoff and the things he comes up with and the world that he builds is just fantastic. It's just such a wonderful, if you love grimdark vampires, this would be a great fantasy book for you. And I just keep thinking of the story that Jay Kristoff unravels in these books, and I cannot wait for the 3rd installment to come out. Like, I wish it would come out right now. Another book that I think about frequently that's left a lasting impression, one of my favorite books of 2024 so far, is Heavenbreaker by Sarah Wolf. And this story is so unique and so different. It's like, it's sci-fi. I think it's mostly sci-fi. It's a blend of genres, but primarily sci-fi. And it's like jousting in space. But the heroine of this book is a young woman who is just, her sole life is vengeance. Like, she just wants revenge, and she doesn't care what happens to her. In fact, like, she doesn't really plan for anything for her life after she gets her revenge. And she's such a strong character and so determined, and I just enjoyed reading about her so much in this book. So if that's something that seems interesting to you, I would highly recommend Heavenbreaker. Another book that I have read this year, one of my favorites that I think about constantly, and even when I read other thrillers since I have read this book, when I read other similar type books or thrillers, I compare it to this book, and that's Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert. This book just had all around fantastic vibe. It was scary, but not necessarily gory. It was terrifying, suspenseful. There's lots of mystery elements for this book, and I'm just a fan of J.H. Marker. The Nightmare Man was fantastic as well, and it's just one of those books that have stuck with me since I read it for our summer ween vlog, and I just think it's one of the best books I've read so far this year. So when I'm thinking more about books that I loved this year, I have to mention Long Time Gone by Charlie Donnelly. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic mystery book. Very, very layered. Everything is layered in this book. Plot is layered. The characters are layered. The story is layered. It's complicated yet so easy to follow at the same time. Fantastic book. Absolutely loved it. If you like mysteries, if you liked thrillers, if you have read Charlie Donnelly in the past and loved his books, I also read Those Empty Eyes, and that was also a 5-star read for me. So highly recommend Long Time Gone, which is his most current release. The last book of my 5 best books so far this year, Silver Blood Promise, comes to mind by James Logan. And that book just was so creative. It was just so different. It was epic fantasy, but it was a story that has definitely not been told before, with elements that like I would never have thought of. There are executions where prisoners are sentenced to be executed, but they could survive them. There is this weird twisted pyramid game in a gambling den that tortures the players, possibly. There is a fantastic story. There is found family aspects with the main character and this little orphaned girl that is just so witty and smart, but also very stubborn and defiant. Such a great, great book. If you guys have not heard of Silver Blood Promise, I did an ARC review on the channel for that book. You need to check that out. It's very short, under 5 minutes, and go check out the book, because if you love epic fantasy, I highly recommend. It is a fantastic read.
Now for the hard part, me whittling down to 5 books that I have to read this year, that nothing's gonna stop me from reading this year. At least, I don't know, we'll see. I think the one that everybody knows that is gonna be on my list is The Boyfriend from Frida McFadden. Comes out October 1st, and as soon as I can get, if I win an ARC, that would be the happiest day, I swear. I really want to read this book, and I am definitely going to be reading it. There's no putting off that. As soon as I get it, and if I don't get it October 1st, I am going to start reading it no matter what. Another one that I was going to read when we were doing our summer ween episode, Amanda can tag that one in our comments too, because we did read 3 books from 3 of our favorite authors. We did get to read 3 ARCs in that video. One from Alice Feeney, which is one of my favorite authors, and her book doesn't even come out till next year. But during that time, I had picked up Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, and I mean, this book looks super creepy, and I really wanted to read this. I have wanted to read this, but it is kind of intimidating to me too. I had seen on Facebook someone talking about this, about how they were seriously scared for when they read this book, and they weren't kidding, and they were warning people about it. And I had mentioned it to a couple of friends, and one of them ended up reading it, and at first he's kind of joking, but then he was like, no, seriously, this one's kind of super scary. So I am curious, but I'm also tentative about this. I do really want to read it though. I haven't read Josh Malerman yet. He wrote Bird Box, and I saw the Netflix film with Sandra Bullock, but I did not read him yet, so I thought this might be a good introduction. I might put this in October with Halloween. That might be a good time to put this on a list, but we'll see. Maybe we'll do a special Halloween, very scary book edition. I might have to read it though when it's bright out, not at night in bed. Who knows? It's gonna end up giving me nightmares, I know it. Another one I put on a couple TBRs, and I want to say it was on Most Anticipated as well. I ended up buying it. I had the electronic ARC, and I ended up just buying it because I am more of a fan of the physical book than I am of the electronic tablet books. But Look in the Mirror by Catherine Steadman. something about this book just really made me want to read it. It's about a daughter who inherits, her father passes away and she inherits this house. She ends up finding some things there, illuminating things about her father that she never knew. And the statement says, and something about her finding something in the basement. I was like, oh dear God, what does she find in the basement? I want to read that. And I'm probably going to be reading it soon. I've been pushing it off a little because we've been reading books for vlogs, but I'm trying to read, especially if I have a tablet one, I try and read a physical book at the same time. And like, I go back and forth and in between, even though it can be confusing when I do that. But I wanted to just try and give myself a break from the tablet sometimes. Danielle Trussoni, I originally read her book Puppet Master last year. And she has a new one, a follow-up with the same character called The Puzzle Box. I just went over that when I recorded for Most Anticipated September, October. And I do have an electronic ARC for that. I plan on reading it before it actually comes out. Even though it's on the tablet, I really want to read that book. Her first one I loved, but then the ending I felt kind of fell apart a little bit. I still was really invested in that story and the character of Mike Brink. He's very much able to solve puzzles easily because he had a brain injury when he was playing football in high school, but the character and the tone really reminded me of Dan Brown and Da Vinci Code. So, and I love those books, and I think that's why I really enjoy them so much, and I'm looking forward to her next one. So it's definitely on my list to read this year. And last but not least, I believe I had this on my August TBR, and I am intent on reading it this month. It's been getting a ton of buzz online, but it's All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. It's saying it has a lot of different genres blended in. There's like mystery, thriller, suspense, as well as some fiction elements. And I just have kept hearing everyone talk about it, and I tend to be influenced when a lot of people are talking about a book, and especially when it has elements that I tend to gravitate towards. So I definitely want to get to this, and I believe I'm going to get to it this month. I always feel like everything, even when I'm talking about them right now, I just can't wait to read some of these. I just want to get to them right now. Especially, I have a week, this whole week, I only have a couple things planned that I have to do, so I am going to have a lot of reading time this week. I feel kind of drunk on that feeling right now. I can't wait to read more books.
So I'm just jumping right in to the 5 books I want to read by the end of the year. And these aren't in any sort of order. Like, these aren't necessarily the order that I want to read them in or that I'm going to read them in. But the first book on my list is Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. And this is the second book in a series. The first book was Assistant to the Villain. And I thought that book was just so fun. I did talk about it in our wrap-up video last year. But that book was just so fun and entertaining and cute. And I wanted to continue the story. So I picked up this book as soon as it came out. I went out on release day and purchase this book because I'm really excited to read it, and I'm definitely want to read this book by the end of the year. Another book I'm going to read by the end of the year is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Bloodsworn trilogy, and the third and final installment of the Bloodsworn trilogy is coming out on October 22nd. It's going to be called The Fury of the Gods, and I just can't wait to finish up this trilogy. I read the first book. I loved it. I did that also for a vlog, if you guys are interested in hearing about that one, and I will link the vlog below, but I can't wait to finish the story. It's sort of a Viking tale, and I was just so pleasantly surprised with the story, with the characters, with how much I was into the book. It was just such a good kind of darker fantasy, and it's set in a world that I am interested in and like learning about. So I would definitely want to read this by the end of the year, and probably the third installment by the end of the year. I'm not sure. I can't commit to it because I know we got a lot of vlogs coming up, and it's just really hard for me to try to fit all the reading in that I want to do, but definitely reading this by the end of the year. Another book I want to read by the end of the year is a book that I've started. I'm only in chapter 4, but I really want to finish it. And that's The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. Jen did get me an autographed copy for my birthday, and I just can't wait to finish it. I really like Meg Schaefer's writing. There's just something kind of magical about her writing, and the stories she comes up with, they are kind of inspired by other books. This is inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, and I just feel like her worlds are so whimsical, magical, and wholesome. I can't wait to finish reading this book. The next book I want to read by the end of the year is an arc that I have. It is coming out also on October 22nd, just like The Fury of the Gods by John Gwynne. And I have been anticipating this book for so long, and they keep pushing back the release date, and every time I think it's going to come out, the release date gets pushed back. But it seems like this is going to be the final release date, because I do have an ARC copy. So even if it doesn't release on this date, I am still going to read it by the end of the year, and that's called Bloodguard by CC Robeson. I just have really been interested in this book ever since I heard about it. And Jen has a friend that also has an ARC that is reading it, and this friend of hers really likes a lot of the books that I like, and she likes the book so far of the arc that she's reading. I'm sure she's probably finished it by now, but Jen just hasn't updated me on her final thoughts on the book. But when last I checked, she really liked it, so I feel like I'm really gonna like it, and I can't wait to get into this one. I'm hoping to get into this one actually very soon, so I will keep you updated on that and let you know what I think. But I do think this is something that should be on everyone's watch list for October 22nd. And finally, the 5th book on my list for books that I want to read by the end of the year is also a birthday gift from Jen, and that's Mr. Lullaby by J.H. Markert. Last year, I read The Nightmare Man, loved it, 5 stars. Just in our summer ween vlog, I read The Arc of Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert, absolutely loved it again. I liked The Nightmare Man just a little bit more, but Sleep Tight was just such a good, well-rounded horror story, and it had lots of mystery in it, lots of action in it, lots of suspense. It was just a great story. So the 3rd and final book by him that I need to read is called Mr. Lullaby, and this book actually came out last year. I have no idea why I haven't read it yet, but for my birthday, Jen got me this really nice copy, and it is personalized to Amanda, best wishes, the hive is alive, J.H. Markert, and I am just so excited to get into this book. This is actually the first J.H. Markert book that I own, so I am real excited. Can't wait. I just have to fit it in between all the books that I'm reading for y'all for vlogs. So as soon as I can, I'm gonna fit in this book and definitely read this by the end of the year.
So thanks for listening to our 5 and 5 that we are both looking forward to and are sharing with you of how much we love them from this past year. I am very excited to see what Amanda has chosen for her 5 and 5. I kind of feel like I can guess some of it, but we'll see. Share with us in the comments anything that you need to read this year, or anything that you feel is just a fantastic book that you read from this past year. I love seeing suggestions. Obviously, I don't need more for my TBR, but hey, I'll take them and add them on. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time.